Hello everyone, welcome to our second class in basic writing. So my name is Scott Cumming. I am the founder and president of Dyslexic Together. And tonight I have Kelly, like in our first class, and I have a question for Kelly. So Kelly, what is the biggest problem people have when starting a letter?
Yeah, I think that people don't know where to start. And so not knowing, there's all these ideas that you have in your head, they're just swirling around, and a lot of people just have trouble starting. So I usually just suggest to students and to people that, you have to have a daily practice where you're not afraid to write, because it's really easy to get into that writer's block mental shift where you can't do anything. So you have to be okay to write bad, poor writing, is okay. It's okay if it has poor grammar. And that's why there's so many different drafts and so many different iterations that we go through before we actually have a polished piece that we're ready to submit to someone. Yeah.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much. So your teacher, Kelly Waller.
Yes. Thank you. All right, here we go. We are at session 2, and you're welcome to follow along at home with the slides that I have here. This is my email address if you want to contact me, kellymarielawler@gmail. And there's a QR code here that will take you straight to these slides. These are the slides that I went over last time, but this time around we're going to try something different, all right? So first of all, since we started talking about writing and the whole writing process, we have to understand that it's a process. There's this quote that talks about how sometimes it's kind of like you're driving through a dark tunnel, and you just don't know when you're going to get to the other side, or what it's going to be like on the other side, and that's what writing is. You start with these ideas and these good intentions, but a lot of times what you produce later on, the art that you produce, is something more beautiful than you had intended. So that's why we're working on writing today, and skills that anyone can use from at home to right here in our class today. All right, so what we're going to get started with is a classroom. Here we go. All right, so we like to use a lot of free Google tools. So, one barrier to adult writing courses and to technology, in the past it has been you have to take a specific course to learn a certain program. 20, 30 years ago, maybe that was more of the Microsoft sheets you had to learn, and the writing document, the spreadsheet. Publisher, right? So I was in college and I took all these classes to learn those programs, but it's free now. These Google offerings make things a little bit simpler. You don't have to pay for them, and it's a little bit more user-friendly, easy to learn. So all of the resources that I'm sharing, I've been building in a Google Drive. And so a Google Drive is what I use. It's connected to my email. You click on this grid box, and you can get to all of these free Google services. So as a public education teacher, I'm down with free, and to anyone at home, it just makes it usable for anybody. So all the files that we're creating and that I'm sharing, I'm putting in a folder, and I can share that folder with anyone else's email address. So it makes it really easy to use, user-friendly. So what we're doing is I created a Google Classroom. And so if you've been at a school, you've probably used or university, a community college, whatever it is, you've probably used like a Blackboard or a Canva. There's so many different programs that schools use and they pay for, right? Google Classroom, there is an educational component to it where there's a Google Suite for Education that schools can purchase, and those licenses are really helpful. Businesses can purchase Google licenses. But this is free for us to use, okay? So I started a classroom, and this is how I'm going to grade your assignments. So we started talking about email etiquette writing last week, and this week we're going to move a little bit more into talking about meeting notes. If you're at a meeting and someone asked you to take notes for the meeting, has that happened to anyone in this room? Yeah, so we'll go over those today. So we're gonna practice different real world writing skills, and we're going to do it in Google Classroom. So what I need you to do is go onto your computer and you are going to type in classroom.google.com. And you're going to be able to join this class code, okay? Now, the people that are in the room, I did send you email invites, so you could also check your email. And so in order to get into our Google Classroom, classroom.google.com, and then this is our code, VEN32YX. And so this is a tool that, you know, as a public school teacher, I use it in the classroom, but I've also used other Edmodo, Schoology. There's all kinds of different programs out there that you can use. And this one's just really simple and easy at the moment. So this is what we're going to be using as our classroom. So I can share materials in here with you. All right. So this is like the streaming page. If you have a Facebook account or a feed, an Instagram feed, this is where I could make announcements or share pictures with the class. And I'm also going to share assignments here, okay? So if we go to the top, can you see these buttons and click on classwork? I just want to show you how to navigate this tool, this tech tool that we're talking about. So if you go to classwork, I put everything here into session 1 and 2. I'll put everything for our next few sessions into session 3 and 4, so on and so forth. So we have everything in our classwork, and so these are the slides that I went over last week. Okay, and I will make an assignment for us to draft up our first email, and then I can grade you on how you did drafting up your first email. So we'll go through and we will grade every different piece of writing assignment that we have as a class, all right? Okay, so before we get started, we're gonna come back to Google Classroom, all right? Don't forget about it. And so I can add students here, and once we get a grading system here, I can go there as well. Okay. All right, so in order to start class today, I actually wanted to show you a quick video that I thought was really fascinating. March is Women's History Month, and so I learned about a scientist, June Almeida, that I hadn't heard about before, and my students were really interested to learn about her as well. So I'm going to show you a quick video, and as we're doing that, I am going to ask you to do some low pressure writing. So I might call this, it's okay to do bad writing. So we're going to do our bad writing journals. And so all you need to do after you watch the video is just, make a connection to it. What did it make you think of? Did you put yourself in her experience, in her shoes? Did you feel what she was going through? Is there a question that you had to ask, right? So we just want to make any kind of connection to the video. And then we'll talk about it afterwards if we have some time. All right, we're going to do our bad writing. 5 minutes. All right, time is up. Okay, so we can share and talk about connections that we made while we were watching that video. Normally, if I was talking with students and they were having a hard time getting started, we've talked about how writing and getting started is one of the hardest parts. I could give them some sentence starters. So, I would start talking about, this video made me think this, right? I connected to this part of the video. It shocked me that. I learned that. These are all kind of basic writing sentence starters to kind of get kids going, to get anyone going when they're doing any kind of writing. So, talking about Women's History Month, celebrating amazing women. A lot of times we talk about how we don't hear about women in STEM fields, in sciences, but June Almeida was able to, through her hands-on learning, working just as a lab tech, right, working her way up because she didn't have the money after World War II, because she couldn't pay her way through school. There was a lot of societal, systemic things that prevented her from doing what she wanted to do. So she started as a lab tech, and then she was able to start working on these different microscopes, electron microscopy, and she was able to learn and get better visual images, and then discovered a whole new group of viruses, which we now very recently had to deal with, right? The coronaviruses are. So I thought that was fascinating. I thought it was shocking that she wasn't, her work was dismissed in her time, and it's not being highlighted until much more recently. She died in 2007, and so, I don't think she was aware of the gravity of her discoveries and how they impacted the world. So yeah, I thought that was fabulous. A lot of things that I start to think about is, I want to know more. So is there a book about her? Is there a movie about her? How can I dig into more research and learn more about her? So that's always kind of where my brain goes to. All right, so I thought that was interesting. I thought that would pique your interest. And because we're talking about scientists today, I have to talk about a famous scientist, physicist actually, who was definitely, from what I hear people talking about, that he definitely had dyslexia growing up, before there was a name for it, right? Do you guys know who I'm talking about? Physicist, crazy hair. I'll show you a picture. Yes, Einstein. Yeah, let me find my mouse again. I lose my mouse a lot. Here it is. Okay. All right, so every class, okay, we're going to talk about Keira Knightley another day. Every class, I do want to talk about a famous figure that had dyslexia throughout their life, and whether they knew or didn't know about it, we're going to talk about what they've learned or what their contributions were to society. So perhaps one of the most famous figures known to have dyslexia is Albert Einstein, a theoretical physicist who won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1921 and has become synonymous with wit and intelligence. So I just something to make note of is, there was a time in our history, different celebrities have shared their stories to talk about it, where they were in school, where they were made to feel like they were lesser, like they weren't as smart. And Albert Einstein is the ultimate smart guy that you want to be, and he had dyslexia. So I just think that is an empowering thought and a connection for us to make today when we're talking about how to learn some basic writing skills. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, and something that he said, words or language as they are written or spoken do not seem to play any role in my mechanism of thought. So he just tried to explain to people how he thought, and he thought also like Picasso, right? He thought more in pictures and visualizations. And so, we know that there are different learning strengths that we all have, different learning styles, and that's obviously a part of it, but dyslexia is also very significant and impacted his reading and his learning overall too, okay? All right, so some basic writing that we want to talk about today, once I find my mouse again. All right, so this is something that we definitely need to discuss. So this is, and has anyone ever heard of the reading rope before, the reading rope? Okay, so this is something that I'm just learning about more recently now as I learn more about how to teach students and kids and anyone how to read. So reading is complex and it's filled with all different stages, right? And so when students master all the different stages, their skill is fluent execution, right? They should be able to speak clearly, they should be able to write clearly, they should be able to read very well and decode everything. So this would be students that are reaching mastery. But look at everything, all the different strands. So this is one way that researchers have tried to explain and explore different components of reading. But students have to have a background knowledge for basic language comprehension, and they also have to be able to recognize words whenever they're reading. So if you look down at the bottom, kids need to be aware of phonological syllables, right? We have open syllables, we have closed syllables. There's 6 basic types of syllables. And then they also have to know how to decode and work on the sounds that they're creating so that they can also decode the words and then spell the words. And then sight recognition of familiar words. So once students master these, they become more automatic and they start to help get students to be more fluent with their final stages of reading, right? And then there's also all of these components that people need to know as well. Kids, right, need to know when they start learning. We also have to start to teach them, and students need to learn more background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures, syntax and semantics, which is what I focus on with secondary students. But then verbal reasoning. Can you read between the lines? Can you pick up on a tone someone's making? Are they being sarcastic with you? Are they being very serious with you? And then we get into literacy knowledge, more literary analysis, which is more of what we do in the secondary grades. So the point here is that reading isn't simplistic. It's not just something that everyone can pick up right away. It deserves direct instruction and explicit instruction. And different learners are going to need different supports. And so I think that's also what's important to point out here. So the reading rope was designed by, and it goes back to Scarborough's lectures. And it just gives you a visual of thinking about how reading is learned, right? And it's a huge process that has different strands, okay? All right, so that was just something that I wanted to bring up today to connect back to dyslexia a little bit before we really get into some writing. I can get into syntax and semantics, and that's what our goal is today, is to get something written on paper and to really look on how are we formulating our words to create sentences. Clear sentences. Okay, so moving on. Okay, now we have another fun thing to do. Open up those journals. We're going to do a quick picture writing prompt. So again, this is low pressure because we're going to be bringing on the pressure. We're going to be building the pressure in just a little bit. But this is a low pressure activity. In the New York Times, anybody read the New York Times? Okay, I like to do the Wordle every day. The New York Times Wordle. Some people like to do the crossword puzzles. There's lots of games on there, the connections, the spelling bee. All right, I'll stop. So the New York Times has had picture prompts for a really long time. And so they'll take their journalistic photography, beautiful photos that they have in their different publications, and they'll post them. And teachers, they post them for free. Never mind, I have a subscription. They're not posted for free. I pay for my subscription, okay, because we don't want free labor here. And you look at the picture and you get to make a story out of it. So sometimes this is one way that people can be motivated to write if you see a visual image and then you create your own story to it. All right, so that's what we're going to do today. In your journals, low pressure, I'll show you an image and we'll take 10 minutes. Maybe we'll shorten that to 6. We'll take 6 minutes to write a response for what you think is happening in the picture, okay? This one's easy. We're starting easy, all right? Low pressure. I thought this might be fun. All right, this is an image. You can kind of think about all the details in the image, right? Because when authors are writing beautiful works of fiction, they pick up on the details, the colors, the shades, the hues, right? What might it feel like? What might it taste like? What might it sound like? So we talk about sensory language, all the 5 senses. And so those are ways that we can build in our writing. And so here is a picture, and it's making you think about, tell us a story, real or made up, that is inspired by this image. And the title kind of puts you into the direction. So it's kind of making you think about the topic of your childhood hobbies. So you can think about your own childhood hobbies. You can think about whatever childhood hobbies is going into this box. Maybe it's going to be stored away in an attic, or maybe it's going to be gifted to the library because maybe they don't need to have these hobbies anymore, okay, in their life. So let's take 5 minutes and come up with whatever is on your minds that you are seeing here in this image. Yeah, okay. All right, we'll stop for now. Glad that got you going. Okay, we'll keep trying some different writing prompts that are like that. Because we want you writing. That's the whole point of this. A few things that I forgot to point out. My shirt, first of all, says literacy and justice for all. It's my favorite shirt. Okay, so as an English teacher, this is kind of what I live by. Yes, we say the Pledge of Allegiance in school every morning, but I really, whenever we say liberty and justice for all, I'm always really thinking about literacy and justice for all. This is a shirt that I just found on an Instagram or Shopify store. It was called Good for Teacher. So I just want to shout out to that company that I purchased it from. But I think it's just really important, when we do talk about providing people with everything that they need, literacy is so important and so basic that it's essential in their everyday lives. We've talked about how 1 in 5 people can have dyslexia, and we've also talked about how incarceration rates go up for people who don't have strong literacy skills. So I really see that relates back to justice too. So just a connection there. Another connection that I just wanted to make is, so right now in schools, there's just there's just so many resources to pull from, and in order to meet different students, different people with different learning profiles, you have to know a lot about them, and then you have to adjust your instruction to meet their needs. So that's why you can't just purchase one program, or you can't just buy one textbook. It's not going to work, and we've seen this historically. It's not going to work for every learner. And so, my children are learning to read. They're at the very early stages of reading, and I just, a lot of what we're talking about, these are leveled learner books that have been really popular. You've probably seen them. all the Disney characters make them based on different progressive reading levels of 1, 2, and 3. But based on the reading rope, we know that students need explicit instruction around sounds, letter sounds, and how does that form together into 2-letter sounds, 3-letter sounds, and 4-letter sounds. And so that's why decodable books, this isn't a newer book. I think these have been around for a while. But these are decodable books which help to target those letter sounds for students and early readers in the classroom. So I took a video, I'm not going to share it, but of my 6-year-old daughter finishing one of these books and being really proud that she did it all on her own. So really cool things happening. All right, so does anybody want to share or talk about what did this picture make you think of? What did you start to write about? You can make any kind of connection. It's no pressure, journal writing. So did it help you start to write, I guess is my question.
Yeah, definitely for me, as soon as I see the fishing rod, it brings back a huge memory of my wife and I. We lived in Alaska, and we fished in Alaska. So I wrote a story about one specific, or I didn't finish the story, about one specific day of when we were out halibut fishing. And for me, I love telling stories. And you just explaining how a story is written as far as the taste of it, the color of it, the place of it, what you feel when you're writing really was big. Because for me, when I write a story, I'm thinking of those things, but to hear it from you was big.
Awesome. Yeah, so we call that sensory language. And if you think about it, if you can recall all of the senses, then think about how much more, times 5, right? You're able to write that much more if you can really dig deep and paint the picture in different ways for different readers. So I think this is what's really nice about visual writing prompts, is they can really trigger something in you to get you to spark a memory. And for some reason, I like how you picked the fishing rod and talked about Alaska. I want to go to Alaska very badly, so that's on my bucket list. But for some reason, I focused on the box. And I started to write about the cardboard box and what we use it for. And I moved when I was in middle school, and it was significant to me. And so I started to talk about that memory. But I'm sure, everyone else could connect with a different image from the picture. So that's pretty cool. All right, so we have 15 minutes left of class, and so there's just a few grammar, syntax things that I'd like to go over, and then we will end with an assignment that I'll post in our Google Classroom, and assignments will be due at the next session. So we kind of started slow session 1, so we're going to keep the email writing assignment for this session. We'll try to use the grammar skills that we're going to talk about today, and then I'll grade them and collect them next session. And then I'll assign something else that session. It'll be due the next session, okay? All right, so we're just going to kind of go in order like that.
The only thing that could you just explain the computer process at the end again?
Yes.
So that that might take a couple of times to figure that out. Yes. I will definitely do that. Okay. After.
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you too much.
Oh. Is this getting any bigger? Okay. All right. This is not getting any bigger? Oh, here we go. All right. So these are just some basic things, essential writing rules is what I called it, that everyone should know. So while there are many, many, many grammar rules out there, so some people back in the day I'm not going to put any numbers on anything. Okay, we're just going to talk about historically when we teach grammar. You had to diagram sentences, and so it was very methodical, kind of like a math equation where you would have to underline the noun, the verb, the adjective, the adverb, the pronoun, and so on and so forth. You would start to have these big diagrams that kind of looked like trees. And so we don't really tend to do that anymore. That I didn't have to diagram too much when I was in school. I just practiced it a little bit. And so then we got into these huge composition language textbooks where you learned every single grammar rule that there was. And so now, we're kind of trying to figure out, like, what are the basics that people need to know? Let's make sure they have that. And then we can dig deeper at different course levels that we offer to students, if students are on an honors track or an AP track, so on and so forth. So, so some basic things that we talk about is just, making sure that everything is in agreement. Okay, and I'm sure you've heard that before. But whenever you're writing, you want to make sure that your subject and your verb agrees. So if you're using singular, keep it singular. If you're using plural, keep it plural. And so this goes into sentences. So if you talk about Schoolhouse Rocks, any Schoolhouse Rocks fans out there, there's a video that I really like from Schoolhouse Rocks that talks about subjects and predicates. So the subject of the sentence is just what or who are you talking about, and the predicate of the sentence is what are they doing, okay? So who or what are they doing, right? So you want to talk, this is the main subject, these are the nouns, and then predicates are the actions or the verbs, okay? And so there's this whole Schoolhouse Rocks video about Pearl, and she gets married to, I just forgot his name. I'll remember it in a minute. But that's from the Schoolhouse Rocks video. So subjects and predicates, as long as you can pull apart and figure out where your verb is, the verb is the most important thing in your sentence. And so we have linking verbs, we have helping verbs, and then we have action verbs. And there are lots of verbs that are really just linking or helping verbs. And we don't always have as many of those action verbs as we think, right? A lot of times.
Can you give some examples then?
Yeah, so action verbs, right? We're swimming, we're walking, we're dancing. And those linking verbs are the to be verbs, which are what we use most of the time. I am Kelly, right? And so I am. And that's kind of your basic. I was listening to someone, right? And so was is there. She is going to the store after this class. So those are the ones that we hear. The linking verbs we really hear more commonly than all of the different action words and action verbs. So once you usually can pull that out, you can find the subject and the nouns, and you can find a lot of the adjectives or the adverbs as well. Okay, so the verb and the predicate is important to find when you're writing a sentence. And then punctuation is definitely something that's important to us when we're talking about sentence structure, but I like to talk about the subjects and the predicates, and then we can talk about the different types of sentences we have, and then we can go on to punctuation. So we have 4 main types of sentences. You have your simple sentence, right? These are simple sentences right in here, okay? So let's pull one out. Sam sat on Matt, all right? So Sam is your subject and your main noun. Sat is an action verb. And our predicate, and then where are they sitting, right? We have that extra information with the preposition on Matt. So once you start to think about this, I'm talking about this like I'm diagramming it, but I don't need to know how to be as formulaic as the sentence diagramming. So being able to spot those verbs and predicates are important to figure out your sentences. So these are simple sentences. They have 1 independent clause. Compound sentences have 2 independent clauses. So that's usually when you start to use your conjunctions, okay, your fanboys. Anyone know what a fanboy is? For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Those are just common conjunctions that we use all the time. So I'm gonna put 2 independent clauses together. I'm gonna put 2 simple sentences together, and I'm gonna say, Well, these are really simple. So Matt sat, and what if we said Matt sat on the grass and Sam sat on the grass? All right, so we put two independent clauses, two simple sentences together, and we get a compound. All right, and then you have a complex sentence where you have an independent clause and a dependent clause. So your dependent clause is your fragment sentence. It's not complete. It can't stand by itself. That's why it's dependent. It needs to lean on someone, right? Independent sentence, it can stand by itself. It's all good to go. So if I said, despite the rain this evening, if I said that by itself, would it make much sense? I have to attach it to something. It has to lean on something. So I'm going to say, despite the rain this evening, comma, I chose not to go for my jog. Does that make sense? So I chose not to go for my jog. That's a complete, simple, independent clause and sentence. Despite the rain this evening, comma, that is your dependent clause. When they come together, they're complex sentences. So you have one independent and one dependent. And then the last type of sentence is it when you have compound complex sentences. So simple, compound together, compound complex. It's just when you have multiple, you start to have really long sentences. Do you guys know what the longest sentence ever written was? I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's like 1,000 words, I swear. I'll find it. I'll let you know. It's probably from James Joyce, Ulysses. That's where I think it's from. But yeah, we can look that up, okay? So we're not writing those types of sentences here. I am not the person to teach you to be James Joyce. This is just an introduction to writing. It's actually 001 is the way I named our class. It's not even a 101 level.
101. This is early.
This is early. Okay, so we'll come back to this, and we'll come back to a lot of the other slides that I used next time. But I want us to go back to Classroom. That's where we're doing our assignment, and we're going to write our email today. We're going to just get started on it, and I'll come around and help you work on Google Classroom. So let's get back to Google Classroom. Is it this one? No, that's my drive. And here's the classroom. Okay, so classwork. This is the email draft, and I'm going to create an assignment for this email draft. So don't go here yet. I'm gonna make an assignment in just a minute for everybody, and then it'll make a copy for you. And you'll be able to write on your own document and write your own email, and you'll submit that sample email in the assignment, and then it'll be ready for me to grade, okay? All right, so let me make this a little bigger. All right, so this is what we talked about for email writing, okay? We talked about what you put in the to line. Who are you communicating with? We've talked about what you're putting in the CC line. Can those people see each other? If you're going to add someone to your email, yeah, those people can see each other. BCC, no, they cannot see each other. So if you want a boss to know what you're sending to another employee that you're talking with, then they will see it, but no one else will know that they're seeing it, okay? So it's a private copy. It's called a blind copy. Interesting history. Does anyone know where these blind copies and carbon copies come from?
Probably the government.
Probably the government, yes, yes. Do you remember when there was carbon paper and there was the 3 layers at offices, right? And so secretaries or whoever was filling out a document, right? Here's my memo for this meeting. I'm filling it out. And you had to press really hard with a pencil or a pen, whatever you're using, and then it would make 3 copies automatically for you. So this is where this terminology came from when email memorandums started to come out, okay? So context is important, historical context is important, and when I teach 12-year-olds today, they don't have a lot of context. So that's kind of part of you can't leave, it makes sense this makes sense for people now if you know a little bit about that history and where this came from. All right, so what you're going to do is have a subject. Please don't send an email without a subject. So you need to figure out who you're sending your email to. What is the subject line? Something short and sweet, capitalized titles. And then you need to have a greeting, your body of writing using complete sentences. We talked about the simple, the compound, and the complex sentence today. And then you need to have some kind of a closing, all right? So that's what we're going to work on in Google Classroom. Once the assignment pops up for you, you'll be able to submit to. Yeah?
Will we have this sample on Google?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Every time we have an assignment, I'm going to make you a template,
Okay.
and then you delete any of my extra stuff that doesn't help you, right? So delete my sample when you're ready to write your own. Delete all of these options and whenever you're ready to write your own, okay? So we're going to work on that assignment. Thanks so much for watching tonight. See you at session 3.